discussion is on impact investing and particularly on the financing innovation side. Although you're going to hear a lot of discussion also around entrepreneurship, because that is the other side of the impact investing economy. I'm sure all of you are pretty familiar with this sector, but I just want to quickly summarize what we mean by the impact economy, which is a new and growing industry in emerging market countries, well, all throughout the world, but in emerging market countries and in Latin America. Basically, we have impact investors who are investors who want to invest in doing social good, social environmental good, but they also want a financial return for that, right? They're willing to take a less than market return, but they're still looking for financial return. And within that, we have some impact investors who want a financial first return. In other words, finance is more important than social. But we also have others that want a social first return. So social comes before the financial. And on the other side, of course, are the social entrepreneurs and social businesses that they are investing in. And these are businesses that have a bottom and often triple bottom line. No, they're looking for social return, financial return, and also environmental impact. There are a variety of social enterprises or social businesses at different stages of development, from startup to early until proof of concept until next consolidation, and then beginning to scale and grow, and then some of them even go on to scale much bigger for much greater impact. And within all of that, there are a lot of support structures that help support this industry, such as accelerators and incubators and different types of funds, early stage funds, funds that are more mature, and this is all part of the growing industry. Very important to all of this is the ecosystem, which is the enabling environment that supports this industry, and which is still quite fragile in our countries, and which we want to grow in the near future. Okay, so I'm going to start my first question. I'm going to direct it to Scott. Scott, I'd like to get you to share a little bit about how you and the Clinton-Geostra Enterprise Partnership go about using impact investing to create enterprises. How do you do this?
Thank you, Nicole, and good morning, everyone. Really welcome the opportunity to talk about this innovative space of impact investing, which I think means quite a few things to different actors in the space. From our perspective, we use impact investing to actually create social enterprises in the developing world from a bottoms-up approach. We actually seek market opportunities where there's gaps in value chains in the developing world around the areas of supply chain, distribution, and training. And with equity investment, create businesses that fill those gaps. So an example is what we have done in Cartagena, Colombia, where we have created a supply chain enterprise that provides capacity building and training to low-income farmers and artisanal fishermen, procures in cash all of their produce, or everything that they can catch in the case of fishermen, aggregates that produce and those goods into a central warehouse facility, handles all of the logistics and distribution, and then sells those aggregated goods off to high-value market buyers. In the case of Cartagena, those buyers include the hospitality industry, restaurants, and supermarkets. We are doing similar work in the countries of El Salvador, Mexico, Peru, and Haiti in creating these enterprises at the base of the pyramid that really seek to solve these gaps in value chains. By making an equity investment and setting both financial and social returns for these enterprises, we are able to create businesses that will throw off cash and profits over a short term that can be reinvested in those businesses to actually expand the beneficiary base that we reach. And at the same time, we establish very clear and key performance indicators for social performance, which in our case is measured by incremental beneficiary net income. So what we care about is income generation and job creation. And while we look at other social indicators as well, by keeping the model simple and looking at how much new income can we generate for the low-income producer base, then we're able to clearly see the impact in a very short time of these social enterprises. And we have a very, very simple indicator, which is beneficiary income return on investment, where the numerator is the incremental income of the producers, and the denominator is the cumulative capital invested in those enterprises. So that gives us a clear picture as the business evolves and business is generated as to not only are we performing profitably, but what is the impact on the ultimate goal here, which is to create new income opportunities for the beneficiary community.
And Scott, not to put you on the spot, but how do the social and the financial side of your work ever come into conflict? Do they come into conflict, and how do you go about responding to that? I mean, what is the vision?
To be maybe a bit controversial, I think by definition, impact investing actually generates the conflict of indicators between financial return and social return. In our case, by creating businesses from scratch, we're actually able to create business plans that align those metrics. And I'll give you an example. From the social side, one would want to optimize reaching as many beneficiaries as possible. But when you're creating a supply chain enterprise where you need to handle logistics and distribution and provide capacity building and training to farmers, it may be in the business's best interest to actually reach a smaller subset of farmers. So instead of trying to reach 20,000 farmers, you may be better off reaching 10,000 farmers so you can actually set up a profitable enterprise. And I mean, that conflict is natural, it exists, and while we would like to do the more global good of reaching as many beneficiaries as possible, if you're going to create a company that can be profitable and bring in more beneficiaries over time, you're better off starting the company perhaps in a smaller way that will evolve the reach to beneficiaries as you begin to reach profitability.
Thank you. Hey, I wanted to ask Marcela a first question to her, and Endeavor has been in the region for a long time, probably over 15 years, if I recall. It's done incredible work in developing entrepreneurs and keeping investment here in the region, or developing investment, by developing entrepreneurs. I wonder if you could tell us, Marcela, how do you prepare your entrepreneurs for investment? How is it? Why do you focus on that, and how do you go about doing that?
First of all, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. I prefer to speak in Portuguese, and then I will speak in Portuguese. Bom dia a todos. É um prazer enorme estar aqui. Respondendo um pouco, o modelo da Endeavor é o seguinte: a Endeavor existe há 13 anos aqui no Brasil como uma non-profit, mas a gente não se autodenomina nem aceleradora, nem incubadora, enfim, a gente não tem uma denominação própria do que, de fato, a Endeavor não se enquadra em nenhuma das caixas de definições propriamente ditas já estabelecidas. O que a gente faz, basicamente? Seleciona empreendedores de alto impacto. Qual que é a nossa visão de alto impacto? Empreendedores que inovam no seu setor, seja em produto, seja em serviço, que crescem 20% ao ano e trazem algum tipo de benefício para a sociedade. Mas é um pouco diferente de uma visão de impact investment propriamente dito, porque ela é mais ampliada. Ela também está muito conectada à geração de emprego e não necessariamente estão somente ao core business e a setores prioritários. E o que a gente faz com essas empresas? Ano passado, mais de 3 mil empresas foram selecionadas. A gente tem uma busca ativa em relação a essas empresas, a gente tem uma área específica de research, de busca e seleção, para achar esses empreendedores, e só 12 entraram no nosso portfólio. Então a taxa é muito baixa dos analisados versus os que entram no nosso portfólio. Depois que eles entram no nosso portfólio, o que acontece? Eles passam a ter um gestor de conta, uma pessoa que full time olha essa empresa, verifica as necessidades, e aí cria-se uma relação de, uma via de mão dupla, né? Os empreendedores falam suas necessidades para esse gestor de conta, que é um funcionário da Endeavor, e o gestor de conta também sugere determinadas skills ou determinadas coisas que o empreendedor precisa desenvolver. E o que ele faz? O conhecimento, ele não detém todo o conhecimento técnico necessário para aquele empreendedor, mas ele conecta uma rede de mentores muito sêniores. Os maiores empreendedores do Brasil estão nessa rede, vários deles palestraram aqui hoje, são nossos apoiadores e nossos embaixadores. E ele faz esse match e conecta o mentor adequado para o desafio do empreendedor. Isso é visto com muito bons olhos, a gente se relaciona muito com a indústria de investimento de uma maneira geral, desde o investidor anjo até um venture capital, até um private equity, porque a gente tem empresas no nosso portfólio. Elas entram normalmente faturando de 2 a 50 milhões de reais, mas isso não é uma regra definidora. A gente já teve empresas que entraram no nosso portfólio faturando mais e empresas faturando menos, mas que tinham potencial de escalar os seus negócios. E, então, em todas as fases desse potencial investidor, a Endeavor funciona quase como um label, porque é muito difícil entrar no portfólio, e depois, como tem esse acompanhamento sistemático de gente muito qualificada, o investidor se sente muito mais confortável, porque ele fala, além de normalmente eu colocar determinadas regras e colocar determinados padrões de crescimento ou algumas coisas que ele precisa dar de resultado financeiro, a Endeavor vai ajudá-lo a chegar lá. Então nós nos relacionamos com todas as, com os private equities, depende do estágio onde o nosso empreendedor está, e também com os impact investments que já existem no Brasil, os fundos de impact investment, porque 40% do nosso portfólio, entre 35% e 40% eu diria, que são potenciais empreendedores que poderiam ser investidos por fundo de impact investment. Então eles já nos procuram muito para saber que tipo de empreendedores estão no nosso portfólio. Então diretamente a gente não investe nas empresas, mas a gente sabe que a segurança que a gente dá para o investidor, muitas das empresas passam a ter potenciais investidores depois que elas entram no nosso portfólio, porque eles veem, enfim, com muito bons olhos as empresas a partir desse momento.
Marcela, o que você acha é o indicador diferencial desses 40% que são empreendedores sociais?
Eles estão, na verdade, na Endeavor a gente sempre usa essa questão conceitual, a gente acaba usando empreendedores de alto impacto, enfim, por uma questão semântica de como a Endeavor se autodefine globalmente. A gente tem que seguir uma nomenclatura global, assim como a Choca, assim como a NESsT, uma non-profit global precisa seguir esses padrões. O que a gente tem feito no Brasil é cada vez mais selecionar empreendedores de setores considerados prioritários. A gente não usa essa nomenclatura, mas na prática o que tem acontecido? Empreendedores ligados à educação, à saúde, à habitação e a questões ligadas ao meio ambiente que mitigam o impacto ambiental acabam entrando cada vez mais no nosso portfólio sendo priorizados. Então não existe uma regra clara, a gente não usa wires, a gente não usa gears, a gente não usa as métricas que vários fundos de impact investment usam no Brasil para selecionar nossos empreendedores. A métrica acaba sendo financeira, sim, é uma métrica que tem se discutido, mas acaba sendo uma métrica de quem está crescendo 20% ao ano. Então não é que tenha alguma, como eu posso dizer, algum direcionamento muito claro nesse sentido. Mas na prática, e esse é o diferencial, a gente tem empreendedores a gente tem um empreendedor de educação, por exemplo, a Prepara Cursos, que trabalha com base da pirâmide, tem 400 mil alunos. E o índice e o aumento, e agora eles começaram com uma rede de ensino médio. Em 6 meses eles já têm 80 mil alunos. Então é inegável o impacto deles. E esses alunos já tiveram um improve, já tiveram uma melhora nas notas da escola nesses 6 meses depois que fizeram parte de uma rede. A gente tem um outro empreendedor que chama Two Life, que ajuda a fazer a triagem na fila de hospitais, no sistema de triagem. Eu não sei se ele seria necessariamente um social entrepreneur, ele não se autodenomina assim, mas ele ajudou a reduzir 50% a morte por ataque cardíaco nos hospitais onde ele foi instalado. Então, que ele já salvou de vidas, então o impacto dele na sociedade eu acho que é claro, mas ele não tem esse rótulo. E eu poderia dar inúmeros exemplos. A Zika e a lei da beleza natural é um exemplo bastante, até o Etchart usou elas como exemplo numa entrevista que ele deu aqui no Brasil. Então ele ter usado elas como exemplo me faz sentir confortável de usá-las. Como exemplo, ela era empregada doméstica, hoje em dia tem uma rede que atende 100 mil mulheres mês. Tem 4 mil funcionários, foi investida pela GP Investimentos, e ela é uma empregada doméstica, trabalha com base na pirâmide e trabalha com a autoestima das mulheres. Tem gente que fala, estética e cabelo, só que tem muitos casos lá de mulheres que apanhavam dos maridos, que não tinham emprego, e por passarem aí no cabeleireiro dela, tem uma ressignificação da sua vida, tem uma autoestima e não apanham mais os maridos, conseguiram empregos que elas sonhavam. Então, enfim, tem várias histórias aí, mesmo se tratando de estética, do impacto social bastante relevante na base da pirâmide de um caso como o beleza natural.
Great, thank you, Marcela. I think we'll talk about why those entrepreneurs might need different kind of financing in some stages later. Okay, Andre, I wanted to ask you, Sabrai has made a big commitment to social businesses here in Brazil and in the process of making that big commitment. And I'm wondering if you could tell us why. Why are you making that change in your focus as an agency? And what are some of the key drivers of that change?
Bom, bom dia a todos. Eu vou continuar no português aqui, para não torturá-los com o inglês. Mas enfim, só para contextualizar, para quem não é do país, o Sebrae, o Brasil é um país muito grande, um país quase um continente. Nós vamos bater esse ano 10 milhões de empreendedores formais, registrados, visíveis para a economia, para o governo, para os governos. E o Sebrae também é uma instituição que acaba sendo muito grande, por conta do desafio, por conta da sua estrutura. Então a gente vem se colocando desafios de atender empreendimentos, atender empreendedores, desde a criança na escola até um investimento de alto impacto, até a startup, até a ponta da pirâmide, até um investimento até um empreendimento que no Brasil é conceituado como aquele, porque a empresa é aquela que fatura até $1,5 milhão por ano, faturamento bruto, não lucro, faturamento. Então esse é o nosso limite de atendimento legal para força de lei. E aí, atender por porte, atender por perfil, atender por setor econômico, cada vez mais se especializando e customizando um grande portfólio de atendimentos. A gente atendeu 1.600.000 empresas no ano passado, com consultorias, treinamentos, O Sebrae é uma grande agência de desenvolvimento e uma grande escola de empreendedorismo, muito focada na gestão. O Sebrae não ensina o ofício em si para os empreendedores. Essa não é uma função de outras instituições, do mercado e tal, mas a gente busca muito fortalecer a gestão dos negócios, Aí, plano de negócio, marketing, a gestão de pessoas, a liderança, toda essa cadeia que envolve gestão. E 1 ano e meio atrás, mais ou menos, essa onda dos negócios sociais bateu a nossa porta e isso instigou muito a direção, a própria empresa, a unidade do trabalho, o progressivo. E a gente, por que não recortar o atendimento, por que não moldar o nosso atendimento para atender os negócios sociais, e começamos a mergulhar em cima disso. Como é que a gente faz esse transatlântico enorme? São 6 mil funcionários, 9 mil consultores credenciados, 800 pontos de atendimento físicos, um portal muito acessado, treinamentos online dados massivamente. Como é que a gente coloca essa estrutura para trabalhar negócios sociais? A gente começou a discutir isso. 1 ano e meio atrás, com parceiros como a NESsT, o grupo de trabalho que a gente deu lá no passado participou, participou de alguns eventos, escutando mais do que falando no primeiro momento, e assimilando muita coisa, discutindo muita coisa e nos analisando também. E a gente chegou a um segmento crescente, a uma abordagem empreendedora diferente em grande medida, a gente chegou a uma conclusão que assim, vai ser, faz parte do portfólio, tem que fazer parte do portfólio. A gente separa o fim lucrativo, o ciclo lucrativo. A gente não pode, a gente não se coloca, até que fosse legal, para atender associações, fundações, atender como prestador de serviço, e sim fazer parcerias para catapultar atendimentos, melhorar, ampliar a escala de atendimentos, fazer sinergias para atender, melhorar políticas públicas, etc. Então a gente foca no negócio com fim lucrativo, né, e traz para esse nicho, hoje em dia, muito incipiente no Brasil. Mas se a gente pegar aí 10 milhões de negócios, 1% de 10 milhões são 5 negócios, 0,1% são 10 mil negócios, advogado é péssimo para fazer conta. Mas se a gente tem aí embaixo, toda índole, aquelas necessidades absurdas que o Brasil tem, que vamos falar aqui, de superar gaps históricos, décadas de uma história de defasagem na educação, nas condições socioeconômicas do país, na saúde, uma população de 200 milhões de pessoas, né? Nós temos aí realidades regionais. Nós temos 5, 6 países no mundo, né? O norte do país é diferente do sudeste, o Rio de Janeiro, nós temos 27 estados da federação, e o Brasil é um dos poucos países do mundo que tem os municípios, né? As municipalidades com tanta autonomia e poder, são mais de 5 mil. É difícil discutir políticas públicas numa estrutura federativa como essa, né? E o Senado também se propõe a isso. Então, com todo esse mercado, né? E a gente tem tanto mercado de necessidade, quanto o mercado financeiro consumidor, a base da pirâmide que eu foco, a gente também voltou os olhares para a base da pirâmide. Temos uma série de pesquisas, nas favelas, né? Hoje, por incrível que pareça, as favelas brasileiras têm 80% dos seus moradores na classe média. É uma coisa que 5, 10 anos atrás não se esperava. Nós temos uma ascensão social absurda, né? Gente saindo da pobreza extrema para a pobreza, e da pobreza para a classe média, e um cenário muito otimista que, mais alguns anos, a gente equaliza, não vai se zerar isso, mas a gente vai conseguir atingir níveis ainda melhores. Então nós temos esses mercados, e aí o desafio, enquanto foi esse, a gente chegou a algumas conclusões, né? Não adianta fundo de investimento, não adianta aceleração, não adianta incubação, não adianta, se a gestão do negócio, se o empreendimento, se aquela gênese, né, se a sustentabilidade mínima do negócio não está bem calçada, não está bem definida, não está bem planejada. E aí a gente entra em todos os nossos serviços, treinamentos, serviços, consultorias, assessorias, enfim, quase tudo que o Sebrae faz é fortemente subsidiado, porque os nossos recursos são públicos, somos uma instituição privada, mas financiada por recursos públicos. Então, quanto mais insuficiente o empreendedor, ele não paga nada, né? Quando vai chegando na ponta da pirâmide, ele paga alguma coisa assim, sempre valores muito simbólicos. Então, a gente olhou para dentro, viu treinamentos para gestão são os mesmos que o negócio social, o negócio não social, o negócio mercantilista, estrito senso, né? As ações de marketing, as ações de gestão de pessoas, de liderança, a busca da inovação. O Sebrae também apoia fortemente a inovação e tecnologia, com consultorias, treinamentos, não o processo em si, mas assim, os serviços agregados, né? Embalagem, a parte de sustentabilidade ambiental, eficiência energética, assim por diante. O próprio acesso ao mercado, né? Pesquisa, ações de mercado, feiras. Aí sim a gente viu que existe, temos que buscar alguns nichos diferentes, mas é tanta coisa, e aí a gente está nesse momento. Estava falando com o Marcelo aqui 2 semanas atrás, na própria médica, a gente fez nossa primeira grande ação assim, pública. Foi uma maratona de negócios sociais, onde 300 empreendedores com o negócio acontecendo já, ou a ideia, participaram de 5 dias mergulhados com mentorias, consultorias, palestras. Esse filtro, 300 inscritos, 60 credenciados que participaram disso, 20 que foram selecionados para fazer um pitch, que nos levou a 6 vencedores, assim, todos são vencedores. E aí a gente começa a levar esses produtos e serviços com essa certeza de que uma transversalidade mais geral é o que a gente deve fazer pela nossa experiência e buscar alguns ajustes finos aí nas ações de mercado, buscar trabalhar muito a sensibilização. Então, a gente trabalha desde o molequinho na escola, passa pelo universitário, que já quer empreender, já tem um senso de participação social hoje no Brasil bastante apurado, indo para egressos executivos de grandes empresas que estão cansados daquele negócio, querem sair daquilo e empreender com algum significado a mais para a vida deles, e a própria base da pirâmide, a base com a base. Dentro da base, hoje, o Sebrae faz isso muito bem, buscar ali a inclusão produtiva, economia solidária, esse tipo de iniciativa, a formalização de empreendimentos ligados a uma série de boas políticas públicas que existem no Brasil hoje, a base da pirâmide, conversando com a base da pirâmide. E a gente tem uma série de iniciativas muito legais também que, oportunamente, a gente pode falar. Mas é esse o desafio que a gente se propôs, e esse é o trabalho que a gente tem tentado desenvolver aí nesses últimos 18, 24 meses.
Great, and I think it's very important to highlight that in Latin America right now, social enterprise is not something that's formally recognized in many of the countries, well, in most of the countries actually. And so for an agency such as Sebrae to make a commitment to focus on a more entrepreneurial approach, a more sustainable approach, using many of the tools from the impact economy and measurements of the impact economy is quite significant. And it's unique, and I think we need to see more of that because we're working with big, very many challenges. It's important for the role of agencies such as Sebrae to get involved so that the market can really expand, and working also on the pipeline building, which is very thin in terms of social enterprises that are really ready for impact investment. So it's very important to build that, and I think the role of agencies and support structures of the ecosystem is critical. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Agora, and have a question for Ricardo. He was telling us such an interesting story about how Agora came to be and the lessons learned along the way, and I really appreciate when an entrepreneur, a co-founder of an organization is honest about the lessons learned from the past. I think it's great. So I'd like to ask you the question about your first vision of Agora doing both the enterprise and the investment side, and what were the challenges in that, and what made you change that to what you are today, to Agora 2.0, as you said?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this great panel. Agora was founded in 2005 to accelerate the growth of companies that have a positive social and environmental impact. And we do that by providing entrepreneurs access to knowledge, networks, and capital. We feel that equation, knowledge, networks, and capital is what is required to really grow any kind of company. If you ask any entrepreneur, they would say, if you just give me the money, I'll take care of the rest. And we found with over 4,000 companies and 170 consulting engagements that many of the assumptions that are built into the early business models of these entrepreneurs don't evolve at the same speed that their business needs to evolve to survive. And whether it's a social entrepreneur or a normal entrepreneur, the one rule that is constant is that the business model needs to be flexible and evolve as the market evolves. We structured ourselves to provide this human, social, and financial capital with a consulting model where we would bring top MBA students from around the world to help our underground consultants work on the entrepreneur's business models. We were working with startups and very early stage companies, which are difficult to work with in any context, especially venture capital in Silicon Valley and social enterprise in Nicaragua, most certainly. Yet we created a methodology. We adopted different methodologies. We did not reinvent the wheel. We we adopted different methodologies where we tried to find really strong entrepreneurs with a vision for growth. And we created our own social venture capital fund, which it was called at the time. Today, known as impact investment funds. And we were trying to invest in the best of the pipeline that we created. It was very, very difficult, we found, to be on both sides of the table. We had this money at the end of the rainbow for the entrepreneurs. That was the sexiest part of the model for entrepreneurs. For funding partners, we actually had money. I was telling the group that actually it was during CGI in 2009 that we opened up our second round of investment. Unfortunately for us, it was 3 or 4 days after Lehman Brothers went down, and the second round never happened. And so we had to raise the first round of $500,000, which turned into the fund. And any of you who have ever managed a fund know that fund economics are difficult in most contexts. Managing a $500,000 fund is incredibly difficult from an economics point of view. However, we found ourselves in a place where we wanted to make investments in the missing middle between $10,000 and $100,000. This is where the pipeline of our social enterprises was coming from. This is where we thought that we could really scale. However, investing between $10,000 and $100,000 from a traditional venture capital fund structure is not very smart economically, especially when you start losing money, as many of our companies did, and where your portfolio, if compared to a venture capital fund, where a good percentage of companies will die, some percentages will get your money back if you're lucky, and maybe you'll hit 1 or 2 home runs. Well, we actually hit 2 home runs, and we might hit a third. The problem is our home runs will probably not return more than 30 or 35%. And that kind of home run, which is pretty normal in investing in small and medium enterprises, certainly in Central America and Latin America, is just not going to cover the losses. So we realized that we had a great product, we had this consulting model, we had this investing model, but really the market wasn't right. And so our challenge was, should we raise a second fund? We talked a lot about it. We determined we weren't very good investors. There was a lot of people out there in the world who were much better investors, who had a lot more money than we did and a lot more knowledge. And we looked at what we had been able to do well, which was the companies we did not invest in grew significantly. Over 60% of the companies that we worked with grew over 50% year over year. That proved a couple of things. Not that we were great consultants, but that entrepreneurs really needed help in understanding how to structure their business models to both maximize value creation as well as impact creation. And the investors that we had met along the way all wanted to come into deals that Agora had done. So we evolved into what we call Agora 2.0. And Agora 2.0 is essentially the Agora Accelerator, where we bring in companies that are post-proof of concept, that have very strong management teams with very strong leadership backgrounds, not necessarily their own business. We're looking for track records that are spotted with both successes and failures. Then we look into the business model. Can we really scale 20-30% year over year? And then we look at what is the social impact? Is it measurable? Is it creating jobs? Is it creating products and services at the bottom of the pyramid? Is it having some kind of environmental impact? And we've created now a network of over 170 investors that have different profiles, all shapes and sizes and colors of money. And we help entrepreneurs through the business model, because they're both proof of concept. What we're really doing is we're deconstructing the business model as they have today. And we're putting it back together with their vision, with some of our experience, and with understanding where they want to get, not only as a company, but as an individual or as a team. And once we put it back together, we're able to rediscover certain assumptions. We're able to put together the kinds of financial models that are in the language of investors. And then we connect the entrepreneurs, once they're investment ready, to these investors. So essentially we took the lessons learned and a lot of failure from being an investor, and we designed the process backward. And today, I'm thrilled to say that over the last 3 years, we've accelerated over 45 companies. We've attracted more than 10 times the capital of our original fund. We're in 10 countries, and in a couple of weeks we're launching our 4th accelerator class with over 30 entrepreneurs from all over Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, etc. And we're always looking for knowledge networks and capital. It's not just a slogan. These entrepreneurs need that kind of support, with the caveat that we have learned the hard way not to really impose our vision of the world and our vision of growth into the vision of growth and the worldview of the entrepreneurs. If you impose that kind of growth, that kind of outside perspective model, the entrepreneur really changes the core of what they think or believe, either because they're in front of you and they want to get your money, or because you provide a very compelling case. My experience and our experience has been that the results aren't the best.
Great, thank you. I want to switch us over to talking a little bit about the financing side. I think in this ecosystem, in this economy, impact economy, you can imagine that the traditional tools that we deal with are not always the appropriate tools, financing tools. You know, we are used to, in the world of nonprofits and charity, we're used to the grant, right? The project grant, the short-term project grant, I might add, you know, which is not what a lot of these social enterprises and social businesses really need. On the other hand, you know, we go to straight equity, which is also something that they're definitely afraid of, or oftentimes not able to take. And what we're wanting to develop today is really a spectrum of financial instruments. Start to think about different ways that we can mix financing. And I'm going to put in a little plug, because this morning, our book that we just published called Social Enterprise in Emerging Market Countries, No Free Ride, arrived at the hotel. I'm very excited about it, but basically in this book we talk a lot about mixed financing and mixed financial instruments and how to work with them. And none of those instruments are mutually exclusive, and not to say that grants are not good for growth. They can be, you know, at the early stages of social enterprise development. But later on, once we have cash flow and we can start taking loans, certainly we need those loans, the kinds of loans that Sitawi, for example, is offering. And also, as we move further along, equity is also, of course, an instrument. So I think it's important for us to think this way and start to create those kinds of instruments. And I'd like to ask, first I'd like to ask you, Scott, if you can tell us a little bit about that. Do you find that, in terms of the financing that you're providing, I think that you mentioned it's mostly equity, but how do you think, what is the role of equity, or I should say patient capital in some of these businesses that you're investing in? Do you find that there's a role for that, and who do you look to for that, or in terms of educating also the entrepreneur to take equity? You know, what are you doing in that area?
Sure. First of all, congratulations on the new book, Nicole. It's a really interesting question, and I'd like to talk about both sides of the equation. We actually started with some small and medium-sized enterprise investment funds, and our objective was to provide equity and debt to small and medium enterprise entrepreneurs to grow their businesses in countries like Colombia and other developing nations where there was limited access to growth capital. And we found two obstacles to that. One is just in Latin America, finding SMEs that have the level of formality to take investment is challenging. And even though we took an approach where we were willing to work with those firms to be patient while they achieved formality before investing, and to actually help them in that process, when it came down to discuss the means in which we would invest, and we brought up the word equity, it was not unusual to get a reaction. You mean you need to take a piece of ownership in my company? And that was the reaction from the entrepreneur. Okay, so the entrepreneur, particularly in Latin America, our experience was the concept of an investor coming in and taking equity and share ownership in their business, even at a minority position, is an alien concept, and one where I think there's a lot more education that needs to be done at the entrepreneur level to get small companies comfortable with that concept and to really understand that that's the best way in which there can be risk sharing and create patience of capital. Okay? Now it's interesting because we've migrated from investment in SMEs to creating our own enterprises with our own methodology, with our own equity investments in forming these enterprises. But the model has been so successful that we are now looking for other investors to come in and share in the strategy. And when I approach some of these other impact investment funds to come in as a strategic investor, what I'm hearing from them is, oh, you want equity, a strategic equity? We only invest with debt. There's too much risk in social enterprises to invest with equity. So I've heard it on both sides of the equation now, from the entrepreneur and from the impact investment community. So there's obviously a big gap in how both entrepreneurs and impact investors look at the concept of capital investments in social enterprise. There's no question that there is more risk in social enterprises than in what, lack of a better term, I would say, non-social enterprises. However, you need to identify investors that actually find value in social returns. And I don't think those social returns can be enough. Investors have an option as to where to place their money. There are very well-defined markets that actually support what risk-adjusted market returns are and to be expected. And you can't expect the investment community to drop that language, drop that lexicon, drop their way of doing business. So what you really need to do is to create an environment in which investors over time can expect to get the financial returns that they expect in the marketplace, but are willing to be more patient in when they actually secure those returns, because they know there's going to be a magnifying effect. In addition to financial returns, they're going to make an impact on the developing world, whether that be through job creation or income generation or environmental improvement or a host of other social indicators. So from my perspective, impact investment will become more successful when social performance is a magnifier on return and not the replacement for financial return.
Great. Is there a role for philanthropy in all of this in terms of underwriting some of the costs of preparing enterprises on the capacity side and also on underwriting some of the costs of capital? I wonder if any, I don't know, Scott, do you want to respond to that one?
We've experienced several grant-based financing events, and we've seen pros and cons. From the pro side, this kind of capital is catalytic because it allows certain actions taken by the entrepreneurs or going into certain markets that probably wouldn't be able to support it up front. However, many times it also distorts the market because there are a lot of other entrepreneurs who maybe just didn't have access to that information or didn't get that chance. So we've seen both sides of the coin. I think that more broadly though, mixed financing is not atypical in the growth of an enterprise. So understanding the growth of an enterprise within the context of the industry, I think is very important so that the philanthropic capital can know where to come in and what kinds of activities to be philanthropic about. And one quick point about entrepreneurs and equity. Investors who invest equity are looking at how their money comes in and how they think their money should come out. The entrepreneur is looking at their life's work. And so it's a fundamentally different kind of equation for them. And I think that understanding that the viewpoint of the entrepreneur and understanding the objectives of an integrated chain of financing structures is key so that we can optimize the philanthropic capital, but so that the equity investor can say, okay, I will decide to put my money here instead of somewhere else, but maybe think about it more broadly and how does the money come in and what are the conditions for the money to come out, more than just say, well, because equity is done this way in New York, this is the way it's going to get done in Latin America.
Something quick to add to that. I think philanthropy can definitively be a risk mitigator in the investment equation. I'll give an example. We have a training center enterprise that we have formed in Cartagena, Colombia, where we will be training 20,000 residents for primarily low-income residents in jobs in the hospitality, port, and logistics sector over the next 10 years. It is a for-profit social enterprise where there are a significant number of paid students, those students who can afford to pay. However, to reach the types of beneficiaries that we ultimately would like to, we realize that we need to provide a significant number of scholarships to these students. And the scholarships are being provided by a combination of philanthropy by the Clinton Foundation, actually support by the Colombian government, support by private enterprise in Colombia. So it is a true public-private partnership which is supplementing the revenue to this enterprise in the form of scholarship donations. That obviously A, accelerates the growth of the enterprise, and B, mitigates the risk for investment as well. And I think trying to understand very clear channels where government, philanthropists, and foundations can participate in these enterprises also help to stimulate the businesses. So in our supply chain enterprises, for example, we also seek philanthropic contributions for the capacity building side. So we will invest in the warehouses and the logistics and the distribution and the infrastructure, but we do ask for grants for the capacity building for farmers. And by giving a very specific track for philanthropy, it mitigates the risk of investment and defines clear roles for all the participants in the equation.
Thank you. Definitely. Well, I'm getting, okay, go ahead, Marcela, since you have it.
Oh, it's just three points that I think are important. Ponto que eu acho que é muito importante é vou falar três coisas um pouco diferentes entre si, mas que complementam as falas. 79% dos brasileiros dizem que é preciso ter capacitação. Só que só 9% se capacitam. Então a gente tem, não só por esse dado, mas por várias pesquisas que a gente já fez, pessoas pouco qualificadas na média. E isso dificulta bastante a vida dos financiadores. Aqui no Brasil, na área de Impact Investment, especificamente, a gente tem uma situação onde a gente tem mais dinheiro do que empreendedores para investir. Então faltam pipelines. Então acho que a filantropia trazer capacitação e ajudar esses empreendedores a ficarem mais preparados para receber esse dinheiro é um papel. E outros dois desafios que eu queria colocar aqui. Como não tem uma regulamentação de social business no Brasil, os sistemas são híbridos. Então muitas entidades se constituem como non-profit e outras for-profit e usam de uma maneira muito híbrida. Eles recebem o dinheiro da filantropia na non-profit, mas o business acontece na for-profit. Então há uma dificuldade aí do investidor, como o negócio social não tem uma regulamentação específica de como se dá esse investimento, e muitos deles fazem a capacitação via non-profit, mas o business em si via for-profit. Então isso é uma coisa que acho que também de alguma medida tem que ser trabalhada. E um último aspecto que eu queria colocar é que os investidores do Brasil correm muitos riscos. Então quando você vai falar com vários dos nossos mentores, qual é a maior dificuldade de você ser um investidor do Brasil, ele fala, eu posso ter 0,1% daquela empresa, se ela tiver uma trabalhista, tem um bloqueio para os estrangeiros, me desculpa, a gente precisaria fazer uma discussão mais profunda para vocês entenderem, mas a justiça trabalhista no Brasil gera uma insegurança jurídica no país bastante grande, e ela é muito protecionista. Então o que acontece? Muitas vezes você tem um problema com um funcionário, é uma legislação muito antiga, e muitas vezes você tem um funcionário específico que teve algum problema, e o investidor é responsabilizado de uma maneira, não há um equilíbrio entre o nível de responsabilização que ele tem e o nível do investimento que ele tem. Então esse desequilíbrio é visto por muitos dos empreendedores, dos investidores, como um dos maiores entraves para eles investirem e ajudarem Esses pequenos negócios que estão crescendo, eles falam, muitos deles dão dinheiro e nem querem ter equity, quando estão muito pequenos, eles falam, o nível de risco que eu corro é tão grande, eu já sou um investidor estabelecido, eu já estou muito estabelecido do ponto de vista financeiro para correr o risco por um investimento num pequeno negócio.
No, very good points, and I think those are some of the points that we're going to be talking now in the roundtable discussions. So basically, and to the points that Marcelo are saying, I think one of the issues is what should those legal entities, should there be a legal entity for these social enterprises, and what would be the right way? How do we not exclude innovation by putting out legal entities too early in the market? I want to thank our speakers. Please, would you join me in applauding them for their contribution? And I want to thank all of you for your participation and interest in this topic. I think what's very exciting is 10 years ago, these topics were not on the table. Today they are, and believe it or not, there's more consensus today about what needs to happen than ever before, so we just need to make it happen. That's what I think, I don't think we need to continue questioning it. I think we need to look at the models that are working, replicate them, definitely a multi-sectoral approach, private-public partnership, everybody has to involve, there's no free ride. Thanks very much, and have a nice lunch.